Good morning, Jean. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes. I'm so intrigued by what you do because it's been something I've needed a few times and it's not something I'm good at. So I I think it's such a valuable service. So tell us first what your company is and what you do.
My company name is Virtual Design for Interiors.com, and I actually use the number 4 in the description
Hmm.
just to make it shorter.
Hmm.
And I create renderings for workrooms and designers with um, mostly the background is using a Minutes Matter
Okay.
program.
Okay. And how did you get this business started?
Well, I've been a workroom. I used to be a drapery workroom in the Boston area for almost 20 years.
Hmm.
And I was always searching for a way to better communicate with the designers. I did both retail and to the trade. And I was always looking for a better way to communicate with them.
Hmm.
Um, the question of, what is a Euro pleat? Everybody has a name for something,
Right.
and it's never the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, again, I had a few designers that actually filled out work orders
Hmm.
and gave me samples of material and came by the workroom and discussed every detail. And then I had people that didn't, and weren't really comfortable using that process of
Right.
sharing the information. So I was at a conference one time and saw the Minutes Matter program being offered, and I was really interested in it. And they had a free trial. So I took up learning the free trial and learned that I am a computer geek.
I love it. Jean, one of the things that intrigues me, and we started to talk about this a little bit before I hit record, is that in this industry, because we can do so much, we think we should do everything.
Hmm.
And as someone who tried using rendering programs, and who I didn't do it frequently enough, so the learning curve was greater. I would learn how to do something, produce something either for a client, a retail client, or a designer, and then it would be 3, 4 weeks before I had to do another one, and it would be like starting all over again. So it was
Right.
painful. So what is your elevator pitch to designers or workrooms as to why they should have you do the renderings for them?
Because I give them a better opportunity to communicate with their clients so that it saves them the time and the money, because money
Hmm.
and time are, you know, together. And it also gives them the ability to have a level of confidence in sharing those designs with their clients. In other words, they'll know that what it's going to look like. They don't have to just describe it, they can actually show them.
Okay.
And that, like I said, creates a level of confidence in the finished product, and not having somebody say, oh, I didn't think it was going to look like that. And when you can
Right.
show them a picture and then actually have it turn out exactly like that, or even just to discuss the little details,
Hmm.
so that you're on the same page. And like I said, it just saves a lot of time to be able to just email them a picture and
Hmm.
say, that's exactly it, or no, can you change this, as opposed to, you know, making mistakes. It saves a lot of time, and that way too.
One of the things that surprised me the most about first starting to work with retail clients is how little they understood about what fabric did. And, there in the days when the swatches were a little bit bigger than 2 by 2, you'd have a piece of fabric in front of a client laid out flat. And then you'd make a width and a half panel, and it's not a flat piece of fabric. And they're like,
Right.
oh, but I don't see the butterflies. Oh, but I don't see this.
Hmm.
So their expectations were not realistic, but I didn't have a way to make their expectations realistic.
And
I
that's,
also assumed they knew more than they did, which was a big mistake.
yeah, that's actually a term that I use a lot, manage their expectations.
Hmm.
So again, it's just, if someone says, I've had people say, I want a swag on the window, and what they really meant was they wanted a relaxed Roman shade.
Yes. And
So
when you said
again,
Europlete, that's the term I normally use when referring to the fact that people don't call things the same thing.
right,
And a picture saves 1,000 hours of
right,
mistakes and redoing things.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I understand that it helps people, whether it's a workroom who does retail or to the trade, it helps a designer manage expectations. What other problems does your service solve for the designers and the workrooms?
Well, again, the biggest thing that it does is it solves poor communication.
Hmm.
And I think that's really the pinnacle of what I do, is create rendering so that people can communicate better. Um, as far as workrooms go, there's so many workrooms that are designers also,
Yes.
or even better, become the designer, because the designer may not be as familiar with, and they're accustomed to looking to the workroom for their expertise in
Right.
how will this look, how will it flow, that kind of information.
Hmm.
And so it's things like scale and proportion.
Yes.
So will a 24-inch valance look better, or will an 18-inch valance look better? Not just in necessarily in the scale, but also, or the proportions, but also in the scale of the fabric. Like,
Exactly.
will it show, like you have a repeat of 24 inches, so an 18-inch valance might just not look as good as it could,
Right.
because you're going to miss some of the pattern. Like you said, where's the butterfly?
Right. Right.
You know?
Where's my
Um,
favorite part?
exactly. And that also can lead to talking about simply pillow design. Where is the placement of that? Sometimes, as everybody already knows, you get fabric and the designer will say, or the client will say, make 2 pillows.
Hmm.
And you're like, I don't know about anybody else, but my head explodes,
Yeah.
because I see 400 different ways to make that pillow, and I need some way. And so our services help people also do that. I've done it before the old fashioned way. I've laid out rulers on the fabric and then laid it out again someplace else, and took pictures and sent it to the designer. And sometimes that works just fine.
Mhm.
But again, in using a rendering, it's just easier to produce it and send it off, and have the decision ultimately with the designer or the client, and so that they know, again, they know exactly what it's going to look like.
It's funny, Jean, I thought about you twice in the last week. We had this set up to record, and I was at a client's house, and I'm a to the trade workroom at this point. I don't work with retail clients, but I went to measure, and the designer wasn't there, and the client was asking me questions, and we've done work with her before, but she's a hesitant consumer. She asks a lot of questions, and she needs to have her decisions justified. Let's put it that way. So she's very anxious and she's asking a lot of questions. And I remember thinking, oh, we should have hired Jean for this. We should have gotten a
Oh,
rendering together for her, because, well, now what is it going to do here? And how is this going to work? And what will this look like? And they're all legitimate questions. They're
mm-hmm.
not questions after all these years I'm always thinking about, because I know what it's going to look like, but the
Yeah.
client does not. And I don't see the clients all the time ahead of time. So I'm not as used to working with them as I was in the past. But I kept thinking, like, one rendering would have solved so many problems for this poor woman. Not that her questions were bothering me, but I was trying to describe things to her in a way that I just don't think I was doing a very good job.
Yes. I think that, to that end, it also helps with communication, it helps eliminate the bad things that you don't, or the things that you want to avoid.
Mhm.
So if someone says, I think drapery panels will look best on this window, the client might say, I want drapery panels. And then if you send them the rendering, you can show them that they might not work in that um, 5-section bay where the
Right.
windows are small and the panels will be overtaking the window
Right.
design. So sometimes it's really good to be used as a way to show people what not to do, as
Yes.
opposed to what to do. And I think
Without
it's very
ever
helpful.
without ever having to say, no, you don't want to do that. You just say,
Exactly.
here's what it'll look like. Oh, you're right. And
Or
it's, we have our expertise, but until that bond of trust is established, or just because a client has something in their head, this is what they assumed they wanted.
right. And trust actually is a great word to use instead of communication. So so doing the computer renderings does elevate the level of trust that you have with your client, whether it be the workroom designer or the end client. It
Mhm.
really does elevate your level of trust because they can say, oh, and if you show them work that you've done before and you show them a rendering, and you can say, now this is really how it looked before,
Mhm.
and this is how the end product, and the client can go, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So again, it is a matter of elevating your trust with the client too.
I agree with that. And we're going to, in a few minutes, we are going to have you share your screen and show how this works a little bit. But I want to ask you a little bit more about how you came to make this a business. So you're a workroom, you get Minutes Matter, you try it out and you say, yeah, this is for me. So what made you develop it into its own business?
Well, it kind of evolved a little bit on its own.
Mhm.
I was using it more and more with my clients to, in the beginning, it was to help me. It was
Mhm.
really to help me. It was very selfish. I wanted to better communicate and show off, again, why things worked, why things didn't, what they were trying to describe, and
Mhm.
make my life easier so I wasn't just, trying all kinds of ways to get the information,
Mhm.
pulling it slowly out of their heads. And so then when you would create these renderings, people would say, yes, that's exactly what I want. And so then fabricating things, again, it had just elevated your level of confidence in what you were making. You're like, yes, I'm not going to go, install this and have everybody go, oh. So anyway,
That's not a
because
good sound.
we've
Not
we've
at
we've
installation.
we've all made mistakes.
Yes.
And on that subject, the worst, I think, well, the worst mistake I can think of right now was I was doing window treatment for my sister-in-law, and I forgot one of the windows. Like there were 5 windows and I only made 4 window treatments. So she was having Easter dinner the next day.
Oh,
So I ran home that night. I actually had extra fabric because I always over order fabric for mistakes and things. And I whipped up another window treatment and brought it back to her the next morning before everyone showed up. So that has nothing to do with renderings. I'm just saying mistakes are made,
yes.
and the rendering will give everybody. If I had done a rendering on that, I would have seen the 5 windows. There you go.
And I will tell you, Jean, you are not the first person to admit making one
Oh,
one short. It's happened to most of us where it's
yeah.
like, oh, wait, there's that other window that I didn't remember to make a window treatment for.
Exactly. So again, I started with the computer program, mostly making my life easier,
Mhm.
and then it turned into everybody wanting the renderings as I was making them. Oh,
Mhm.
can you do one? It wasn't just for the designer that I was working for; it was for their clients.
Okay.
And so then I realized how much time it was taking me and how much I really enjoyed it. And to your point earlier, the more I did them, the easier it was, the less time it took. As in everything, there's, a time where you really need to learn a program.
Right.
And so it kind of evolved into, I really enjoy doing this. I am getting a little older and
I
I
don't know what
don't
you're
want
talking
to,
about, Jean, but okay.
I don't want to stand on a ladder anymore because again, we had talked about this earlier, the idea that you had to do everything. So I did everything from measuring to installing,
Okay.
unless it was something really high or complicated. And I really didn't enjoy the installation part. I mean,
Hmm.
so again, it was just the realization that I'm also getting older. I do not enjoy I love fabrication, but I didn't enjoy the other parts of the job.
Hmm.
And so it was really just, well, what's working for me better? What can I do? How can I better honestly make a business and make more money?
Right.
You know? And so it just evolved into realizing that I could actually sell this as a service to other people.
Hmm. And I will say that having taken the time to learn a rendering program and how difficult it was, I but I also still fall into that mindset of, well, how hard can it be? And this is another time I thought of you in the last week. I'm making a faux Roman shade for one of my nieces, and she's having a really hard time understanding where the trim is going to be on it.
Uh,
So I said, oh, I'll just draw it out for you. Don't spit your coffee out. I edited, I pulled up the photograph, I went into markup, I drew the shade on it, I drew the trim on it, and I filled in, it's going to be a solid white Roman shade. So I filled in the whole thing, and for some reason it didn't save. So I spent about 45 minutes
mm,
drawing it on a photo in editor on my iPad, and it's gone. I'll never get that 45 minutes back. And I went, well, and
mm,
she still can't see what it's going to look like. she
there you go. Well, again, so using the computer rendering service, I don't have that problem anymore because there are already pre-packaged designs in the program. So I don't have to worry about drawing some of the basic things. So if that had happened to me, it probably would have taken, say, 10 or 15 minutes to put it together.
Right.
And if I lost it, it wouldn't be a great, you know, time suck because I could just go back and find it really quickly.
And let's face it, the second one of anything we do, whether it's fabrication, drawing, or anything else, the second one would have taken you 7 minutes. So you would have taken 17 minutes to do something it took me 45 minutes to do, and didn't have
Right.
anything to show for it at the end of it. So
Right. But
so
that's also, again, that's, as far as even just some simple things as a workroom or a designer would want to show a client, the trim placement. Do you want
right.
it on the edge? So again, sometimes it's very, very simple details that you're showing somebody that mean a lot more to, again, the end client that doesn't take long, but can really make a big difference in the end result for what
Okay.
it's supposed to look like.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. So let's say I am a to the trade workroom, and some of my designers really don't understand window treatments that much. So they call me in for my expertise in what will look good. And I have some ideas, but as I've just admitted, drawing them on a photograph is really not a great thing for me. So I want to hire you to give me, say, 2 or 3 renderings for one room to give the designer some options. How do I work with you? What's your process?
Well, you would usually, actually, designing over a photo is one of my most popular services because people usually do have a photograph, whether it's good or bad. And so you would simply email me the photo.
Mhm.
I can adjust the photo. It's not just a rendering service, but there's a lot of good apps out there that can make a photo a little bit better.
Right.
I also use other applications like Photoshop to help enhance pictures and products that I'm going to insert into the rendering. But you would simply just email me the photo and the details. So I want, 2 width panels. This is the fabric. This is the pleat style. And then I could just simply add it to that photograph and send it right back to you. Like I said, I usually end up cleaning up most photos that
Yeah.
come to me. I have been able to create a system where I can remove almost every single distraction in a photo. Even like if and when you take a picture of a window, it's usually really difficult with the light that comes in the photo to the light in the room. But I've really accomplished some amazing renderings that have taken out all of the disastrous details that are in the way. And then be able to present them a fresher picture of not only the room, but the details in it. And so, like I said, designing over a photo is probably the most popular because it's just an immediate image of what any kind of design will look like in the homeowner's room.
Right.
And
there's
that
less
really
imagination
strikes. Yeah.
Yeah, less imagination is needed on the homeowner's part to know what it's going to end up looking like.
Right. The second most popular is when there's it's just not a good picture at all, or they haven't gotten a picture, but they know the dimensions. I do a lot of floor plans to elevations to full room design, so that it isn't just throwing window treatments on windows anymore. I've really stretched the imagination of this program so that I'm able to include actual vendor items. So if your favorite vendor for couches or chairs or lighting, I can also add all of those details so that you can actually upsell to your clients and show them, you see how this beautiful lamp would look with, all of the other items in the room that I've shown. So it really is just a matter of emailing some details. I always like to at least have one small conversation just to kind of make sure that we're on the same page, or if I have questions about, again, what they mean by a certain certain detail. And it's really very quick. My turnaround time is usually within 2 days, depending on the scope of the project.
Right.
And everybody is usually very surprised at what the rendering will come out looking like. And I just have developed, I'm sorry, my website is finally up and running. It's only 2021. And so that actually has given me the ability to say, just check my website out. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but it's just that great one place that someone can go and see the different types of things you do. And then I think as soon as they see it, they get it. Oh, that's what you do. Oh, that's what I need. And we can move forward with it.
Okay. So now's a good time for me to let you share your screen and show people exactly what the renderings look like. And if you're listening to the podcast, this will be on the YouTube channel. And we're probably, I'll put a note about how far into the video you're sharing your screen. If you've already listened to this much of the podcast, you'll be able to go right to it in YouTube. So you can share your screen, Jeanne.
Okay, let's see. Oh, share your screen. Okay. All right. So this is a very simple rendering, but it shows exactly the difference in styles when someone says, I want a swag treatment for my window. And these all have some sort of swag going on. And so again, it's just the ability to be able to say to somebody, what do you mean? Is it a relaxed Roman? Is it a London shade? And so that's just something that's very simple to show the different styles that are out there.
But they could easily be misconstrued.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Let's see, what else can I show you, Seal? I should have this set up.
Do you have a finalized rendering?
So this is, let me go back here. This is the room that the designer sent me, a picture of the room. And this is the actual rendering of what the room was going to look like. It was she was doing everything from soup to nuts. She was doing all new bedding, new furniture. And interestingly, she said, oh, just throw a window treatment up on the window. And so I had actually just made one of these woven top panels for someone recently. And I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. So I put it in there. She ended up making it.
Okay.
She was like, oh, I like that idea so much. So she actually made the woven top panels for her client just because it was something that I added.
Right,
And so
I'm still seeing your Minutes Matter screen. I'm not seeing the picture you want to share with me.
oh,
So I think what you need to do is go back to the share screen and choose, I forget which one it is. It gives you an option of showing your entire computer or just the screen that you have up. I forget how that works. And I'll edit this part out of the podcast, but
okay.
I can see your mouse moving.
Okay, record this. I don't know.
Okay, I see. Well,
What if I do that?
all right, I saw your mouse move to the that button, but nothing happened.
So you're still just seeing the
The swag, the London shade, the relaxed Roman. Now I just see you. Okay, so when you go to, let me try to share my screen. Okay, when I go to share my screen, it's either the desktop or it's a specific page.
okay.
So take a look at that and see if you can choose your desktop instead of just a specific screen. And then we should be able to see the photograph you wanted to show us. There we go. I'm looking at the headboard and the pillows.
Right.
Okay.
So this was the photo.
Okay.
This was the
Hot
photo.
pink mess. That is awesome.
This was the photo that the designer sent me. And
Okay.
with her directions, this was the design that that they ultimately wanted with new bedding. And so, as I said before, the designer said, oh, just put something up on as a window treatment. And I had just made these woven panels, and so I added them, and the designer liked them so much she ended up having them made for this room. Now, this is a designer that was in California, so that's another wonderful thing about what I do is I can do this from my home,
Right.
and I can talk to people from all over the country,
Right.
and have them, understand and communicate easily. So this was the beautiful end result of the bedroom.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I could also show you some very simple, sometimes it's just showing people options.
Yes. So they can see 4 different choices of what that room will look like.
Exactly. And so this is just simply a picture of the landing in a client's home. She had picked out the fabric and also for the window seat. And so we just talked about different styles for that window, and it was perfect. It was like, which one? And sometimes I try to push people in the way that I would like them to go.
Right.
So I
Right.
try not to put up an Austrian shade, for instance.
Right.
Things that I would enjoy making. And again, I don't have the workroom anymore, but still, as a designer or a workroom, making suggestions to things that not only would you suggest because with your expertise, it would work better for that space,
Right.
but also for things that you like to make and would feel better about than doing something that you would cringe going through.
Yes. And honestly, Jean, I have heard that repeatedly where people would say, oh, I sold a lot of these because I liked making them. And if you don't want to show something that you can't fabricate, then they could say to you, please show this and this, but do not show this because I don't know how to make that. I don't want to offer.
Right. Right. And it could be just a personal, again, as a designer or a workroom that designs.
Right.
Sometimes, like you said, you just don't want to make something. This particular slide is a good vision of what the room looked like before. This is a photograph. The design that was proposed for the client, and then the finished room looking mostly exactly like what it would.
Right.
It's interesting that sometimes on renderings, like the center rendering here showing the fabric, it was a very subtle burgundy fabric with a tiny little gold dot on it.
Right.
And sometimes I enlarge it in the rendering just to show people, because it doesn't come up, it isn't as bold as that, but you do want to show off the fabric.
Right.
So that's just another example of the before the actual rendering and what the room looked like afterwards. And again, something as simple as also being able to show all of the fabrics that you're choosing
Yes.
for that design within the rendering, so
Right.
that people can see the whole colorways or
Mhm.
the direction that you're going.
Right. How everything works together. And
It's
I think something like that, like we said earlier, that just sells it so quickly. Oh, is that what it's going to look like? Do it. I'm
right.
ready. Yeah.
The other thing that one of the other things that's really helpful as a workroom is to be able to show whether you would want, as in this slide, whether you want 3 swags or 4 swags across
Yes.
a large window like this. And again, once you show somebody, they're like, oh, okay, this is what I prefer.
Yes.
And so then the end result was this photo, which was the 3 swags, which I think looks a little more balanced. Everyone always talks about odd numbers of
Right.
items. And sometimes that works perfectly. Sometimes it's just a personal preference. But
Right.
again, you can show people what their options are. Um, and again, suggesting better options for them is always a good thing. But it also, in the end, I think, again, we talked about confidence with and trust with your clients. I also think that this is you get to show off, if you will, your expertise. So
Mhm.
again, that plays into the confidence level of your client when you can show them this is what it's really going to look like. And I think people, I mean, nowadays this isn't so. When I first started this, I think it was, oh gosh, I can't remember what year I started using this. I want to say it was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
It was still something, that people didn't always see this. Now people are doing all kinds of computer programming to be able to show people, so it's not as unexpected, but it's still, I feel, a really good tool to have in your work belt as a workroom or a designer, for
Right.
sure.
Right. So these are beautiful. And for anyone who's just listening to the podcast and doesn't have the visuals, like I said, this will be on the YouTube channel so that you can go see them. Jean, when when you first started this, you were starting to make the renderings for people who were like you and doing what you did. At what point did you think, okay, I can expand this a little bit and I can reach other people? Did it happen organically? Did you reach out to people? How did it happen?
It did start organically. As I had said before, I just started doing them more and more for people because it made my job better, and then other people would use it, and I thought, okay, I can make some money at this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that I would like to do this more full time.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I really started reaching out to people. I would get in touch with either past designers that I had worked with, other workrooms, and really tried to sell my services.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it started to really grow and really take some traction. as far as a service. I've had clients that I've had, for many, many years that still come back to me. Some I do almost weekly.
Okay.
And some I do every couple of months where they'll have something that's more complicated. I have talked to many designers and workrooms about how to include the fees that I charge into their fees,
Right.
because some of the pushback I got when I first started was, well, for instance, designing over a photo, it starts at $95
Okay.
and they can get 3 different changes. So you do a valance or um, a shade or a shutter. I even do hard treatments
Hmm.
too. And you can change up and make a few changes within that $95. And so people would say, well, my client might not pay for that. And I'm like, well, you don't need to tell them that that's what you're charging for. You just
No.
need to be able to incorporate it into the services that you are offering. And this
Right.
is, as I've always said, good, better, best services. So you can say, well, we can do this, or I can show you, you know, another process and just like I said, incorporate it as far as a fee.
Well, and I also think, Jean, this is the type of service where the, the, this is part of the designer's expertise, whether that designer also is a workroom or they're a
Hmm.
designer who subcontracts the work. There are plenty of interior designers who never discuss their window treatment workroom with their client.
Right.
So when the window treatment company comes back with the cost, you don't say to the window treatment fabricator, "Ooh, I can't make any money off of this." Yes, you can. You mark it up.
Exactly.
And those are all the parts of doing business, but I don't have to say to a designer, "I'm paying for a rendering from somebody else, so here's the fee for it." I say, "Here's what it costs for my services to provide this product for your client." And it includes
Mhm.
the amount of money it costs to have the rendering made, if that's a service I want to supply to my designers.
Exactly. As a workroom, I started doing a good, better, best program,
Mhm.
not outwardly telling anybody about it, but
Right.
I had designers that I worked with, like I said, who used work orders. What a shock, and gave me
Yes.
samples of the fabric. I'm
Right.
sorry, but a lot of people have a hard time. I think a lot of creative people don't have the ability to do the paperwork and do the business side of it as well. And which is why we should all be hiring accountants and
Yes,
other people to help do some of the background work.
absolutely.
And actually, as an aside, I remember I tell people this all the time. I was at a seminar one time, and Beth Hodges was speaking, and she was just delightful in so many ways. But
Yes.
the first thing she said when she was growing her business was that she needed to. They always say hire somebody to help, and the first person she hired was a cleaning lady, because she said you need to hire people that are really good at what they do and can take away something off of your plate. And she said, I didn't have to worry. She had kids and a husband, and she just didn't have to worry about that part of it. And though it sounds kind of, you know, silly in some ways, it really just alleviated her stress level so that she could concentrate better on her business and not the business of cleaning.
Yes.
And so I think that that's really important as far as some of the things that I can do to help other businesses is take some of that stress off of their plate and
Exactly.
do the thing that I'm good at. And one of the things that I love to do is to be able to make up a rendering for a designer or a workroom and be able to include their logo so that it looks like it came from them
Yes.
and it looks very professional for them. So I do everything from floor plans to mood boards.
Mhm.
And we've been talking a lot about window treatments, but a lot of my renderings now have become more 2D renderings. And so it incorporates again vendor items such
Right.
as lighting and furniture, and so that people can get a really good feel of the whole room. a good opportunity for people to upsell their services too. But
Right.
again, a good way to help them present themselves in a very professional way also.
Mhm. So, Jean, you mentioned a little bit of hesitation with pricing. What other challenges did you find as you transitioned from a workroom into this service provider?
I priced my services like I used to do with my workroom
Mhm.
services. So I considered the time it would take me and also the I'm sorry, what the current
The-
sorry.
no, it happens to me all the time. The investment or the,
No, how much the
I'm going to take all this out, so relax. The going rate?
yeah, what the thank you. What the
Okay.
market could bear for pricing also.
Mhm.
I looked at what other people were doing, but I also had to consider, like I said, what my time was going into each rendering. And that's how I've priced them. I've also, every year, I increase the pricing just a little bit. Because again, it's all about keeping up with not only the current trends, what I'm able to do as a service provider, but also, needed to make a living, the cost of
Right.
living and all that. I used to do that as a workroom. I know a lot of people talk about that, but I would just up my prices 10%. Not every year, and some things stayed more the same
Right.
than others. But again, I see a lot of people struggling with the pricing thing. And it was just, I guess it was something that I never really struggled with. I
Mhm.
was confident with what I do. And I think that's what it comes to, is that you have to be confident in what you're offering. And I think once someone sees what I can produce, then I've usually got a customer for a long time, which
I'll
is
bet you
nice.
do. And I also, as you said, you're getting older, and I denied that I am, but I am. It, looking towards, Janelle Deck did the class, the Workroom Endgame. At a certain point, I know
Mm.
some of the people I interview say, "Well, I'm probably going to die at my sewing machine, and I intend to do this for as long as I can," and that's all wonderful. But sometimes there are reasons to think, okay, I'm not going to be able to haul those bolts of Angel's lining down my basement steps forever.
Hmm.
Um, and if it's a 25-yard bolt of fabric, it requires different physical skills that I'm losing as I get older. And so thinking ahead into what else can I do that people can find value in? What service can I provide? Because you're using Minutes Matter, can you like do a, no, it's my watermark. I know you said you can put a logo on it, but is there a way for you to, I know when we send information to clients, whether it's by email or we print something and give it to them, if we have not established a good relationship, or we haven't established that, yes, we are the ones doing the work for them, there's always
Right.
that chance they can take it to somebody else. So can you
Sure.
mark it for people so that it's clear where it came from?
Well, again, I usually add someone's logo.
Mhm.
I can do a ghost logo across the whole
Mhm.
rendering. And again, I think it comes down to, you're right. You may not have a relationship with someone, but it definitely comes down to trust. I'm on a couple of different interior designer Facebook groups,
Mhm.
and they talk a lot about that, about presenting things and having people go off and have someone else do it or whatever. I think that's always going to happen, but I think that again, I can put some images on the renderings that will at least say, hey, it's mine. You can still bring it to somebody though. I mean,
Right.
there's nothing you can do about,
That's, of
putting a
course.
couch, placing the couch in a corner and a chair and, on a different wall.
Right.
But again, I think that's just a matter of building, some trust with your eventual, hopefully, clients.
Right. So your market has expanded, started out with people just like you, and then you found that. Have you thought about what else you can produce or who else you can produce for, or are you happy with the market that you're working with right now? What thoughts do you have about your business for the future?
Well, just to take a step back, I want to say that in part, one of the reasons that I decided to close my workroom was because we had to move.
Okay.
We actually sold our house, um, and so the options for the next place we were going to live were more about um, what we needed for
Hmm.
our future as opposed to what we had currently. And I had actually transitioned most of my business into renderings, so
Okay.
that worked for me. I very much miss my work table.
I'll bet.
I still have my sewing machines and stuff, but I do miss that whole process of it.
Mhm.
Um, but that was kind of an easier decision for us to move on and move out of the workroom business completely.
Okay.
And so now that I have a little bit more freedom, I am looking into, I shouldn't say looking into, I'm taking some classes right now for different 3D options
Oh,
because that's
nice.
really what the future of renderings is all about. I
Right.
don't really want to get into so much kitchen and baths with that seems to be a lot of what people are doing with the 3D visuals, but I still want to be able to produce some 3D renderings because they're just really cool, and to
Yeah.
be able to show somebody to walk through their place. Many times I'm doing several rooms in a home,
Okay.
and as a designer or workroom, those rooms are always going to be relatable as far as color and style. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm looking at things like Chief Architect and a few other 3D programs. So I'm doing some free trials right now just to make sure there's so many options out there. And like I mentioned, a lot of them are for more architects and more intense interior designing of
Mhm.
spaces, and I'm not going to become that person. I want to do the renderings for these
Okay.
people, so I want to be able to produce something that is still um, current with
Right.
the technology. So that's my next step. I'm hoping to have a few things settled up and decisions made in a couple of weeks and be able to start doing some 3ds.
Oh, that's exciting.
Very excited about that.
Well, and we talk about it frequently on the podcast about learning, continuously learning, and safety standards change and technology changes in products that we can use in the workroom. So you're talking about using technology. Your entire business is now based on a technology. So if you don't keep current with it, then you're going to fall behind in that aspect.
And that is, again, one reason why I stay in touch with both workrooms, installers, and interior designer Facebook pages because I'm not always able to offer. I hate to just kind of like read and what's the word that they use where you're just lurking,
Oh,
you know.
right.
But I still find I can throw a few helpful things towards the workroom area.
Hmm.
I learned something from the installers, but I just still like to know what's going on, like you said, in technology and tools in the installers page. And in the designers pages, you can see what their issues are, what their struggles are, what their successes are.
Right.
And I get a lot of good leads on what good vendors that they're using so that I can add that. I have a whole list of vendors websites that I can go to.
Hmm.
So one of my limitations with doing the computer rendering is if the vendor's website does not have a clear and concise
Oh,
visual, I can't always include it.
okay.
So one of the other, I've found this new program that's a 3D program that actually has images from all different types of vendors furniture wise, and
Hmm.
you can just choose the vendor and choose the fabric, and it will put the fabric on the couch or
Hmm.
whatever for you in the right the stripes go the right way and
Right.
everything. And so those are the kinds of things I've found online that have become more useful for me to be able to, again, someone says, well, can you actually put this Bassett couch in your rendering? And I'm like, yes, yes, I
Yes, I
can.
can. Oh, that's very cool. That's
So
very cool. So I often ask about offering other products. Y- Your services have been able to expand because of the technology. Very,
exactly,
very.
exactly. And that's what I'm very, very excited about and looking forward to, because I really do love working on computers. And so I have a setup where I have a laptop and I have a bigger monitor, and so I'm always intrigued in trying to learn something new.
Mhm.
Um, I most recently was approached by a designer to help her redesign a screened in porch for a client. And I'm like, "Hmm, I don't even know." And so I figured it out though. I figured out how not only to help her design the space, but then I was able to, I know it sounds silly, but I was able to put screens on the porch, which to me, it was one of those little details that I
Yeah.
know it was just me. It's like a workroom thing when you put a button on something and you're
Yes.
like, woohoo,
Yes,
buttons.
exactly. I was thinking that.
I was very excited about the screens.
But I think
So
we've become so accustomed to what technology affords us that had you sent it out without the screening in, it would just have the feel that it wasn't complete. And so
ex-
as you know, I don't think you actually can be a good workroom without being a complete perfectionist and into the details. So that makes perfect sense to me that you needed to see that part of it.
and I think that to that, I just want to say that I think that what has helped me promote my business with other people is that I do have the background and
Yes.
expertise myself in not only how to, make a valance, but how it gets installed. And also, learning from interior designers over the years about style and function and form,
Mhm.
that I can actually talk to someone and understand exactly what they're going through, and be able to also offer some insight. I mean, I've had a designer call me just to talk about the crazy client that she
Mhm.
has, how is she going to talk her down off the ledge of whatever the circumstance was.
Right.
And so we found a solution and then created a rendering for them. So that's how I feel like my background has really helped promote the services that I can offer. I understand what everyone's going through,
Right.
and hopefully I can make it a little bit easier for them
Speaking of
and
the
make more money.
and make more money. I'm with you on that one. Speaking of the installation, I know that I have seen rendering products that you can include like how high you want things installed. Can you use your information to send a work order to an installer?
So I've done that many, many times. So
Okay.
I've not only helped other workrooms create work orders for their designers, which is
Mhm.
great, because then it has their own, everyone has a different way of doing things. And
Yes.
so their work order is exactly the way they need it set up for their business.
Okay.
I have also created informational renderings for the installation.
Okay.
So I can actually, either through a picture, an actual picture of the window, or through a rendering of just a blank window,
Right.
show them exactly how high, where the rod's going to end up, where the drapes are supposed to be hung. I've actually done recreations of the specs of the hardware, so I can actually show them where the rings are supposed to lay, that kind of thing. So it can get to be the kind of details that workrooms really need to be able to um, transfer to their installer, because not all, a lot of times we're not there.
Right. And again, this is the installers do what they do. And I don't install. There's a reason. I just don't. And being able to give something like that to an installer, you can get them set up or you never show up on the job. Here it is. Here's what needs to be done. That is perfect. I
Right.
love
And again, sometimes it comes down to just showing them. I mean, most installers have seen everything, but I use it as a a work order for them before the job.
Right.
So again, sometimes you might say, you might have the installer, as you should,
Mhm.
go out and measure.
Mhm.
And so they've seen the window, but they've seen 100 windows that
Right.
week. And so after the fact, the workroom or the designer sending them a worksheet that says, this is the hardware we've picked out. This is the type of bracket, so that they're prepared ahead of time. It isn't just something you give to them that day, but something beforehand so that they can go, okay, I've seen this before. Oh, maybe I should bring an extra whatever.
Right.
Help make sure that the job, or they might have a question. You
Mhm.
know, seen that that actually isn't going to work. And maybe they'll come back to you and say, can we install a little lower, or, you know, what kind of option? So it might also create a better conversation before the job starts to be installed. So
Absolutely.
those kinds of things we have created also for workrooms to better communicate with the installers also. And I
Oh,
think they're very appreciative of any kind of information.
yeah.
Like I said, most installers, I'm not questioning their expertise or experience, but sometimes you do run into situations that you haven't seen,
Right.
or because of the hardware, you might. I know a workroom who only uses one brand of hardware,
Right.
and so that installer is never going to have to worry about what it looks like, or whatever. But there's a lot of people that use many, many vendors,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, as we know, every bracket is different. So,
Yes, we do know that. And I'm thinking you may only use one type of hardware, but you may get into a situation where you have to choose another one, and then you won't have the same area of expertise with it.
right, right.
Jeannie, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I have been fascinated with your business for quite some time, and I am so thrilled that you could share it with us. And as I said, the YouTube video will have you sharing the screen so people can see the difference. I will put your the link to your website and your Instagram page in the show notes, as well as
Great.
a way for people to reach out to you. But I want to say thank you, and um, just
It,
how appreciative I am of the expertise from your background that you've brought to this service for workrooms and designers. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I'm very happy to have talked about myself today. And actually, preparing for something like this really does get you into a mode of trying to think about, what do I do and how do I do it and how best to present it. So it's made me think about a couple of new ideas for future rendering. So again, I appreciate the interview. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was good to talk with you.
You too.
I hope it was helpful for you to hear about Jean's business today. I really was fascinated by how she turned this experience into a new business for herself. And the actual renderings themselves have always fascinated me. So I hope you find it helpful. And I hope that you will consider that you don't have to do everything yourself, and that using Jean's services might be helpful to you. Thank you so much for listening to this Opportunity Thinking series. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm enjoying bringing you the Opportunity Thinking series of the podcast. I'm enjoying bringing you the Opportunity Thinking podcast series. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day. Today on the Opportunity Thinking series of the podcast, we'll be speaking with Jeanne McDermott. She is the owner of Virtual Design for Interiors. Originally, as the owner of At Your Service, which was a drapery workroom in the Boston area for over 15 years, she was always searching for better ways to communicate with her clients. She discovered she had a passion for computer programs, and she developed it into a service for designers and workrooms to help them to convey their ideas in a fast and efficient way. Jean's years of experience in the workroom and design process, from concept and measuring to procurement and installation, gives her the ability to understand complicated design concepts and offer solutions in addition to translating the design vision. It saves both time and money that her Saving both time and money, her service creates an environment of confidence between the workroom designer and clients about what the project will look and feel like as it's presented. I think you'll really enjoy hearing from Jeanne today and what she has to offer. There is a visual component of today's podcast, and it will be on the YouTube channel. I will put a link to it in the show notes. And just like any technology, we had a few little bumps in the road getting it on the screen. So you can listen to the podcast and then jump onto YouTube to see what Jeanne shows us in the screen, or you can go right to YouTube to listen to the podcast. I hope you enjoy hearing from Jeanne today.